Salam and welcome back to Somali Dispatch, SomaliDispatch.com. My name is Abdi Kadir Guled. Some of the international observers of Somaliland's local and House of Representatives elections recently released a final consultancy report detailing their observations and pointing out what worked and what didn't work, notably the role of civil society in holding a credible elections in the future. Joining us to discuss the report is Guled Jama. Guled is an activist and a lawyer. He joins us from Hargeisa, Somaliland. Guled, welcome to Somali Dispatch once again, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the time you allocate for Somaliland issues.
Thank you. If you could start us off by telling us about this report, specifically who wrote it.
So, since Somaliland has started the democratization process, the international community and international partners have been observing Somaliland's elections, but they also support it in different ways. Therefore, there are two groups of observers. One is international, limited international observation mission, and the other is local observers. Therefore, the report was issued by limited international observers, a mission of international observers, and it's limited because the number wasn't that much, but their presence was important for observing elections, giving recommendations, and also, I think, boosting the legitimacy of the electoral process.
Right. What was the main takeaway, the top line takeaway for you as it relates to that report? And I might point out the report is posted on our website as well, SomaliDispatch.com, and people can go on there and read it for themselves. But as for you and this time, what jumped at you in the report?
The report has made a number of recommendations in various areas. And I think the areas it covered include the electoral process in pre-elections, reforms of the election laws in areas that there are gaps, but also improvement in the voter registration process. It also covered the areas of plurality of political parties. As if you are aware of, Somaliland political parties are limited on 3 parties, and independent candidates are not permitted. And that has been seen as an obstacle to the political process. Therefore, I believe the number of recommendations made by the mission in the report, if translated into actions, can improve the upcoming elections. And I think the mission and the purpose of the report itself is not to criticize what happened in the past, but to give Somaliland authorities and stakeholders opportunity to learn from the past so that they can improve the upcoming elections. There are a lot to learn from the report, and I really appreciate the mission that put together. What is new, I believe, because a number of issues raised in the report were also raised in previous observer reports in 2017 and before that. But one of the new things include the role of civil society, which has been always overlooked by outsiders. And now a section was dedicated to that segment.
Right. As we both know, the role of civil society, at least where Somaliland is currently at, that role is vital as it relates to getting voter registrations, helping voters to cast their votes in an open and transparent way, helping election commission and parties, and more importantly, the public. There was a consortium of civil society groups or a group called SONSAF, and their role is detailed in good, bad, and indifferent, I should say, in the report, this consultancy report. What was their role before we get to what was said in the report? What is their general role?
Civil society organizations, community-based organizations, and other forms of citizen associations are important for democracy and electoral process because they are supposed to raise the voices of the public and hold the government into account. And a nascent democracy like that of Somaliland, civil society organizations that are impartial and independent are very, very important. What happens in many parts of Africa is that NGOs, non-governmental organizations, become sometimes mixed with state institutions for a number of reasons. First is the role of international donors and aid in forming these organizations. And then the money, where the money goes, becomes more powerful than anyone else. The power dynamic is played there. And aid is not neutral. It changes things. It empowers some, it disempowers others. Therefore, there are always a group who would like to retain the flow of money so that they become the gatekeepers, and everything has to go through them. The second thing is what we human rights defenders across the continent call government-owned or government-operated NGOs. We call them GONGOs. Because human rights organizations and NGOs always raise their criticism against the government, some African governments try to have their own NGOs so that the legitimate and independent NGOs are weakened, and those GONGOs become more powerful than the others, because GONGOs have the access to the government, the support of the government. And those who are not affiliated with the government becomes weak because they become less accessible to government, they become less accessible to international aid. And I think that same scenario is playing out in Somalia. Somalia is not different from that thing. But what I think happened in many years is that the discourse was, the discussion happens in Somalia now. We all know what's going on in Somalia and civil society, but it rarely goes public. What this report has done is to highlight some gaps in SONSAF and other civil society organization in relation to its performance of tasks. And the catchword they use is a gatekeeper. And what SONSAF has been blaming many years is to be a gatekeeper so that no one else is acceptable to the government, because SONSAF is there, and if you don't go through SONSAF, you can't go there. A gatekeeper to National Electoral Commission. If you go through NEC, you can't work with the NEC, National Electoral Commission. Therefore, the report highlights an organization that has training observers, but they were not given accreditation by NEC because NEC wants only to work with SONSAF. And they also become gatekeeper for some international donors. And therefore, these international donors, whenever they come here, whenever they want to disperse money, they first go to SONSAF. Then SONSAF become so powerful. And for that power, they become able to weaken other organizations. And who are the victims? The victims are women organizations. Because when women organizations try to form new organizations, the gatekeeper doesn't allow them. Therefore, they die down. Organizations, NGOs based in regions and districts outside Hargeisa also become the victim of the role of the gatekeeper of SONSAF. Then instead of having plurality and diversity within civil society, you have one strong entity that is pro-government. It's not a sector that they are pro-government, they don't hide that, who's using their support of the government to crush other organizations. And that is a huge problem, because if you don't have a diverse, plural civil society organizations that come from the grassroots level, the democracy is weakened because the state institution becomes powerful, and then the rights of women, the rights of community, people who are in prison, are not protected because there's no one who is speaking on behalf of them. And I think the report, the section in the report, can be put in that context of weakening civil society.
Right, and this consultancy report is not really a criticism. It's merely pointing out and showing and logging what they've observed in the elections, and they presented it. It's just the keen eye was able to see that there is and as you said, people who live in Somaliland are following all the news in Somaliland, know how SONSAF works and other NGOs work as well. So it jumped off the page to me to see such a friendly report would point out these discrepancies, yet no one seems to be talking about it outside of you, of course. What has been the reaction like? Was it, we already knew what SONSAF was doing, or are people indifferent, or is there like, what is, how are people reacting to this report?
Well, in social media, particularly in Facebook, where many people use, when I posted this report, people were saying, we all know that that's not in use. For the ordinary people, it's not in use. Everyone knows, many people knows, I should not say everyone, about the role of SONSAF. But I think, as you said, the report was not critical, and that's not the role of observers, and I agree with it. They simply outline what they observe in a friendly, nice way. Um, and that's why I was trying to contextualize what was going on. Because if they observe it in an election day, you could imagine what's happening outside of the election system, because SONSAF is not working only on election issues, although they monopolize the election issues. They're working so many different issues. And one important thing here is, SONSAF is supposed to be NGO, non-governmental organization with membership of organizations. Therefore, legally speaking, any organization can join or refuse to join. But what the government is depicting SONSAF is as the only umbrella in Somalia, that if you don't go through them, you don't exist. And some donors, unfortunately, are dealing SONSAF in that way. They forget that the entire purpose SONSAF was established was the umbrella for willing NGOs. Therefore, if you are a member of SONSAF, you are a member of it. If you are not a member of it, you are not a member of it. There should be no way NGOs are forced to go to the queue after SONSAF. They should be free whatever they wanted to do. And I can understand something here, because SONSAF was established, because SONSAF was a part of a bigger project that was running in Somaliland, Somalia, all these, they have the same name, forum, as a last name. And they were established and given a lot of money, huge money was spent. And I can understand some donors don't want SONSAF to fail. And I don't want SONSAF to fail because they spend money. And it's our organization. I don't really want SONSAF to fail. I don't want SONSAF to be eradicated. But I would like to see SONSAF perform, SONSAF to become democratic, SONSAF to become independent from the government, and SONSAF to become less confrontational. They should not be there to attack others in society. For instance, let me give you an example. What everyone knows is that SONSAF is very undemocratic. Only few groups run it. Only this group become the chairperson of the organization. And they are always in the board since the first day SONSAF was established. They never go away. They're always in the board. They always run it. And they're always there. And then people always ask us how undemocratic institution can work on democratization process. And that's fair. And for the public, SONSAF and any other NGO in Somaliland is the same. Because for them, what they see from SONSAF is what should be blamed for NGO. Therefore, my main concern is not with the government. I can understand why the government is keeping SONSAF as the gatekeeper. But my main concern is some international donors. And I think they need to revisit the way they approach Somaliland civil society. We have been really patient a long time. They are free to choose who they want to work with, or they're going to give money. They have completely free, but they should not act and empower free organizations and then imbalance the power dynamics, because that's taxpayers' money. The money collected from all of these places and all over the world was not intended to harm the power dynamics in Somalia.
I appreciate that assessment, and it's always been true. I'll get back to the DPU consultancy report, but just have to say this. It's been my experience with you, and it's always inspiring to hear that the things that you bring forward is not to destroy, but to reform, as you said, and it's better to reform what it already exists than to start from scratch. DPU consultancy report really kicks the ball to the international donors, as you said, and to look at how they do things. And if the idea of supporting Somaliland's elections is to just be that, but to me, it seems like it's hindering. On another level, the government similarly seems to be doing the same thing, and the established parties, this keep away game that revolves around Somaliland elections and governance is just mind-boggling to me. But I also wanted to highlight how communities in Somaliland, the public, always bring their game and they participate despite the hurdles that they have to jump through, despite the difficulties, and they seem, to be forgotten in a lot of this, in commending them in how willing they are to be a participant of this social construct. Finally, what is the role? We know what the role of the government is in running SONSAF. To me, of all the things that the opposition parties talk about, SONSAF or civil society is never brought up. Why do you think that is?
But before I go that, there's a disclaimer I like to make. When I'm making this remark, I'm speaking on my behalf. I'm not speaking for anyone else. I used to be part of some NGOs, which I funded some of them, but I'm no longer part of Somaliland civil society. Therefore, that's some disclaimer I would like to make. In 2017, before the election, the opposition rejected to work with SONSAF. And civil society organizations, which I was part of back then, didn't like that because we wanted to save SONSAF and the role of civil society. Therefore, we worked with SONSAF and pressured the opposition to accept, at least temporarily, SONSAF in observing the 2017 election. I wasn't part of SONSAF, but the reason I was doing that is the reason I'm now talking about, that SONSAF needs to be saved from the leaders of SONSAF, because money was spent. It's a huge organization, and the way they are handled really is very problematic. Therefore, the opposition really raised their voice in 2017, and I don't know what they're going to do in the coming elections. But if SONSAF continues to ignore local and international concern on how it handles issues, that will not end up well, I believe. Therefore, this is a very important issue. It's not a work of one NGO. It's not a work of SONSAF. It is the issue of accountability of NGOs. Because if NGOs are not accountable to the public, if they are not transparent, if they are not independent, if they become monopolized, then the democratic process will be damaged in one way or another, because civil society organizations are part of the process. If they become dictators by themselves, then the culture of democracy cannot be nourished in Somaliland. And that's my concern. My concern is not the organization and the individuals. It's that my fear is that it is cultivating a very dangerous precedence. And that's what I don't want. I want a strong, independent civil society that can hold any government into account. The government in power now, the government that may come in the future, so that the people's voices are heard. I want a society that doesn't pressure women organizations and youth organizations, but gives them a space and platform to join and become, strong by their own. I would like to see a society organization that are present in regions. They should be in Las Anu, they should be in Porama, they should be strong there. But if you monopolize and create a huge organization, that doesn't want an organization anywhere. That doesn't like youth organizations. That doesn't like women organizations. Then what are you creating? And everyone is guilty here. International donors are, the government actually is, but civil society failure is also our failure as a people who have worked in Somaliland civil society. Therefore, real warning, it is time to do something in order to save Somaliland civil society.
I can't thank you enough, Guled Jama, and your explanation of at this point. In the meantime, thank you for joining us tonight and explaining this issue to our audience. We appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you very much for giving me a time and giving this issue a time.
You're very welcome.